Hello and welcome to Sustainapod, the youth-led podcast for the youth and anyone who's interested in sustainability. My name is Paco. I'm the head of logistics here at Sustainapod, but I'm also the host of this engineering series. This is the final part of the series. It's been a lot of hard work, but I'm just happy that it's out now. So this episode is going to be a little bit different than the rest. Today, I'm joined by Millie, one of our outreach members. Welcome, Millie.
Hi guys. Congratulations on finishing your series.
Thank you, thank you. It's been a lot of work. Millie is one of our newest members here at Sustainapod. So, Millie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, this is Millie. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, but I started studying in the UK since 2 years ago, and I'm currently taking A levels, and I'm planning on doing an engineering degree at university. So, as you might have guessed, I'm highly interested in sustainability, not just because that I was literally melting when I was in Disneyland in July, but also because climate change is the utmost issue that the global community should be striving to solve. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Billy messaged me a couple months ago asking if Sustainapod was still recruiting. And of course, we're still recruiting. So we accepted her.
If you're a student interested in hosting, content creation, or editing, send us a message on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Gmail at Sustainapod.
Absolutely. So Millie and I are both engineering students. So we thought this would be a good idea for us to reflect on the 4 episodes from the perspective of students entering university next year. So, are you ready, Millie?
Yep. The first episode we recorded was with Professor Duster of the Charge Around Australia team. He focuses his research around organic photovoltaics using the semiconducting polymers to make thin films that can capture solar energy. So, Paco, what were some takeaways from Professor Duster's episode?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the facts that he told me, which was quite profound, I think, is that the normal solar cell is about a centimeter, 2 centimeters thick, but their solar cells are like 300 microns thick. So that's zero point 0.3 of a millimeter, which is extraordinarily lightweight, low cost to manufacture. I just think that's really nice.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. And another thing I believe is very crucial in this episode is he talked about since how renewable energy is intermittent, we need to maximize every single bit of it. And that's where his uh semiconducting polymer comes in, right? He was trying to collect the solar energy as much as possible because it's very flexible. It can be printed and it could be put anywhere, which doesn't require a strong structure in order to hold it up, right? So it's very interesting. He also talked about how energy storage is actually like a really important thing that engineers should all be striving to solve. So currently there are only a few ways of storing energy, including pumped hydro, gigantic battery, which is very explosive, and using vaporized gas to store energy. And it's certainly something that we need to think about, and engineers should have a deeper thoughts into it. When the sun is not shining, when the wind is not blowing, usually that's when we need the energy the most. So that's why we need to have these kind of infrastructure in place that could actually meet the demand and to actually make sure that energy supply wouldn't run out.
Absolutely. And that's kind of linked to our second point here, which is efficiency. Professor Destor talks about how we shouldn't really be thinking about efficiency, rather we should be caring about cost. So to quote what he said, when they're targeting about 4 to 5% efficiency and 4 to 5 years of a lifetime of each OPV, at that point, the energy that they're generating is cheaper than a coal-fired powered station, which I think that's just absurd considering how much we care about coal right now as something that we shouldn't be using for the future.
Yeah, that's certainly something very interesting. I've also heard that for an engineer, the three considerations that you have to think about is first on cost, and then on efficiency, and then on sustainability. It's usually around these things. All of these three factors are the most important thing that engineers should be thinking of and to actually understand throughout when they're starting a new project or anything.
Absolutely. And the last point that he talks about was the diversification of learning. So at the end of the episode, he talked about how he wanted to ditch organic chemistry after university, but obviously you can't do that when you're talking about semiconductor polymers. So yeah, he mentioned that for most of us today, the jobs that we're going to be doing in the future, they don't even exist yet. So that's why it's so important for us to study broad and have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like me and Paco are studying A levels at the same time, and we're like also studying the same subjects, I believe. So there are actually times where we want to drop one of the four subjects because you only need three to go to university, right? But now that I understand that it's very important to have a diversification in learning so that you get as many skills as possible so that you would be more employable in the future. So next, I think we'll switch to Professor Leung's episode. He's the director of the State Key Laboratory of Marine Pollution. And in our episode, he talks about the design of eco-engineered tile and the aim to mitigate the damage done by seawall. So Paco, what did you learn from the interview?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of things I've learned from this interview, but obviously, you have to appreciate the bioblocks. If you don't know what eco engineering is, it's to imitate the natural environment to provide suitable habitats for living environments, repairing the damage that is done to nature. So what did they do? They reduced the pH of the blocks. They replaced metals with glass and carbon fiber. They used more rougher surfaces. All of these are making the temperature of the seawall lower and also allowing more marine animals to live there, which I think that's a great initiative.
One of the interesting points is that this bioblock is not just built for like the animals, not just for like protecting marine life, but it's also helpful in terms of helping humans to set up a right boundary between the sea and the land. And also like it helps citizens to avoid from damage done by, I don't know, tsunamis or that kind of stuff. So it's important how like this invention is both important for humans, for animals, and the ecosystem, because eventually sustainability is not just about providing a better future for humans, but also about the environment around us. Next, he also mentioned something about himself that he couldn't go into university. A few decades ago, I believe that there were not many universities in Hong Kong. There were only two. He said that. However, despite not getting into university, which most of us will probably freaked out, he became a very proactive learner. He's tried to study different aspects of different issues happening in the world and realized that he's actually very passionate about environmental studies and pollution. These kind of things that actually motivated him to become a very deep learner, and he actually get to learn wider things. So I believe that proactive learning is actually very important for everyone. If we have a time, why don't we just pick up new books, not just about things that we're passionate about, but also about current issues and try to figure out what other things that you might be interested in. That's very important. What do you
Absolutely.
think, Paco?
Yeah, I think completely the same. When you're exploring new topics, it's not really about reading new books, though. I think it's also about exploring your passions. And Professor Leung also talks about this when he says, at a young age, I encourage you to not just stay in front of a computer, but work as a volunteer in some green groups. And that would help develop your mindset and your passion. And I believe that's true.
Yeah, certainly. I heard that people say that the best way of convincing people to like to get on your ideas, tell them why do you do what you do. Tell them your genuine interest and why do you think this issue is the most important for like humanity. That's how you can get your idea across, and that's how you can get your idea to the world.
Yeah, and before we get into the other two episodes, I'm just gonna slip a quick plug here. Before we transition into NGO and entrepreneurship, we've been posting summaries of every episode over there on the Short Reads Instagram. You can get the most essential snippets of information there with no time. We also have the rapid fire questions. It's over there, so if you want to see it, you can get it over there. That's Short Reads. That's SHORTREEDS. Now, moving on to Vicky Chan's episode. So, Vicky is the founder of several NGOs, and that includes Walkability DVRC, and I think he has six companies. So, Millie, how many projects do you run?
Well, currently I've been doing two projects. The first one is the one that we're doing now, and the second one I'm part of is called Sciencepedia, which is something that me and my friends have been doing like recently, but we haven't even started like our first forum. We have been preparing it for months, but it has already been a lot of work and we're not sure if we're going to continue.
I was honestly shocked at how well the episode went with Vicky Chan because I didn't realize he was that well spoken. He talked about a lot of trends that I didn't encounter. For example, he mentioned the idea of K farm, which is not only just to build an urban farm, but it was also to make sure that we can teach kids about how important farmers are in our societies and how crucial their role is in our communities. And I think that's something that all future engineers need to consider how we can rebuild our environment, supporting our local communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand education is something that we all should be talking more about, right? It's about the future, not just the present. We're talking about how could we also convey this idea of sustainability to our future generations? How could we protect our environments and make sure that like human won't go extinct? So that's why education is so important. That's why we need to tell like the younger generations how important sustainability is and in what ways can we actually make sure what we're doing currently does not compromise the needs of our future.
Yeah. So how does Vicky talk about climate change? How does he tell we can cope with it?
Well, he has two layers of answer to this. And the first one is something that I wouldn't expect from an architect because he talks about like this behavioral changes. He talks about a very interesting trend in terms of fashion that people actually cares about what they wear so that they would be able to present themselves professionally at work. And he talks about why people wouldn't want to like walk to an office. They're wearing a suit. So that's why they would maybe prefer driving in a car instead of like actually walking or cycling in a suit. So I think that's very interesting and something that I've never thought of. Well, he also talks about ballpark estimation of 70% of the buildings in our city, which are old and inefficient. And I never thought of that, like, because um he mentioned that no matter how many new net zero buildings that we're going to build, we still need to upgrade the old ones. And it's always the old ones that are causing issues. Even if we're having these net zero buildings, we still have to care about how the old ones are still damaging an environment because they're incredibly inefficient. So these are the answers that he has given in terms of solution of combating climate change, and I found them really helpful.
One of the other things that I found was pretty impactful was how he was working in an NGO because obviously everyone wants to make a commitment to help the environment, but working with NGO has costs. You have to get funding from somewhere else, or maybe you have to work as a free volunteer, as Vicky does. But there's obviously some rewards to working in an NGO. And he talks about the networking and the opportunity to talk to anyone and get some advice from other people. I think that's really important. That's why I joined Sustainapod. But I don't know about you, Billy, but was that the reason you joined Sustainapod too?
Yeah, certainly. Because especially like I think at this age in high school, like among high school students, I really couldn't find a community where like people are actually so passionate about sustainability. So I'm really glad that I found you guys, and I really do encourage you guys to join us and to actually like talk more about sustainability and to care about our future as like as being the younger generation. So finally, we have the episode with the tire collective's Hansen chart. So as Paco mentioned in the last podcast, tire dust is the second largest microplastic pollutant in the world. And I really didn't know that. So the tire collective has been trying to provide the next catalytic converter for the tire wear. And that's really impressive.
I mean, yeah, when I first met Hanson a year ago on a Zoom call, it was really crazy to think like what tire wear was the thing you guys are researching about. But yeah, they've won a lot of awards, a lot of grants, and it all came from his passion for sustainability, which is one of the points we're going to talk about right now. When he was really young, Hansen first encountered sustainability through his school. He was interested in architecture and urban design, but slowly sustainability crept in there. And then he slowly moved away from architecture to product design. And I think that's important that no matter what you're doing, you strive to create something that will impact the world.
Yeah. Thinking about like what first brought me into sustainability, I couldn't think of a specific incident that has suddenly empowered me, but rather I'm thinking about like small issues. For example, reading a book called The Uninhabitable Earth, which talks about how Hong Kong will be sinking in 2050 with a temperature increase of like 2.5 per year. And that's really impactful on me because I've never thought that like be such a beautiful city like Hong Kong would be sinking. And I see like there are different issues happening around the world and how there are like heat waves in the Europe. Despite all that, what I'm trying to say is that sustainability has been a thing that more and more people are aware of. So I believe that it's something that more people should be getting into and to actively find solutions to. What about you, Paco? What brought you into sustainability?
Yeah, what brought me into sustainability was I think Sustainapod was what brought me into sustainability. When we created Sustainapod 2 years ago, that was when I first realized, oh, it's not only about environmentally friendly. It's not only about like, oh, let's use solar panels. Yeah, it's not just that. It's about how we can adapt to mitigate carbon emissions and all other problems in our world right now, and how we can keep moving forward, I guess. One other point that Hansen talked about was about his startup. So obviously, the Tire Collective started as a group of university students, and it's so hard for us to think, oh, a master's project actually turned into something that has been an award-winning company. It's crazy to think about, but sometimes the startups do fail. Sometimes they pay off. It really depends, but Hansen says that no matter what you get, the experience is always the thing that will pay off, and it will be a steep learning curve, but he says worth it.
Yeah, certainly. I think the thing that is most interesting to me is that how he talks about there's a friendship hat and the boss hat. Because when you're trying to start a company with your friends, there are often times where you don't know where to put the boundary. Like, how do you treat this conflict as a friend? Do you treat this conflict as a business partner, right? So what I've get what I've gotten from this is that there are times when you need to put a safe boundary between friends and business partners. And when you're treating a conflict, it's important for you to understand that there are issues uh, that needs to be solved at that moment. So that's the major takeaway that I've got.
Yeah, and he mentions that he read somewhere that the real CEO is the mission. So we should all be thinking about what the mission of a company is rather than, oh, I'm the CEO or I'm the boss. I should be guarding all these people and telling them what to do. It's not really like that. When you're with a group of friends working together, it's more about what is the mission and how can we all help to contribute to that mission.
Yeah, certainly. He also has suggestions quoting that if you have an idea, definitely talk to everyone about it because through conversations, we'll be able to build your network of people who support you and who doesn't, and who can actually like give you encouragement and guidance throughout your way. And that's something we've touched on, and it's something that important for everyone to know, I guess.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of risks that go into startups. Those risks are some things that make people afraid of going into startups. And that's something we talk about with Hanson, the difference between going through a corporate job and going to do a startup. So, Millie, what do you think about your future career? Have you been thinking about if you want to go into corporate jobs or if you want to start a startup?
Well, actually, I've been thinking about this question recently. So my conclusion is that I'll probably spend like most of my time working in a corporate company, especially when I've just graduated from my undergrad degree, graduated from universities, because I've already spent a lot of money in education. By working in a corporate, I would be able to get more sustainable income. Maybe I'll continue to do that up to the point where I have enough savings that I could actually invest more time and money into a startup. I've also seen it somewhere that only 10% of the startups will actually succeed. So I'm not sure would I be like brave enough to take on the risk. What about you, Paco?
I mean, it's basically the same, you know. It's hard for us to say, oh yeah, let's build a startup and then we'll hope to make money from it. I think the most important thing when you're starting a startup is to know that you're not going to make enough money that you think you'll make, you know, because everyone's like, oh yeah, I can get rich from a startup. No, if you treat a startup as your one and only job, you're not gonna like your startup. You have to treat it as something you like doing. And I think that's the most important thing. I mean, Hansen also says there's a lot of pressure to find a job after you go to uni, climb the corporate ladder, but there's a lot of other alternative routes that you could go. Even though going through a corporate job is good and it's well supported, stable pay, there are some risks with going through a startup, but maybe those are better, maybe those are worse. Those are for you to decide.
Certainly.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the end of this series. It's been a long series. It's been I think it's about like 7 months of recording and a lot of planning, a lot of editing, but we hope you enjoy. Thank you, Millie, for being here. Hope everyone out there enjoys. If you want to join us at Sustainapod, as always, you can message us at sustainapod@gmail.com, or you can find us on Instagram at sustainapod_GIH. For one last final time, this is Sustainapod. Thank you for listening.